Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My wonderful co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour over 2 years ago, and it's been so great. We just keep coming back every Wednesday and bringing another two wonderful writers with us to read you stories. This week, we have sort of a greatest hits. We have Ruth Joffre and Aimee Ogden, who've both been on before, and they'll both be reading for their favorite nonprofits.
Sorry.
If you are able to help out anyone at this time, look at the featured nonprofits. Even if you're not able to, maybe just find out about them. So when you do have a little change in your pocket, you know some good places to send it. Ruth Joffre is reading for the Transgender Law Center. Transgender Law Center is the largest national trans-led organization advocating self-determination for all people. Grounded in legal expertise and committed to racial justice, TLC employs a variety of community-driven strategies to keep transgender and gender nonconforming people alive, thriving, and fighting for liberation. Transgender Law Center advances the movement for transgender and gender nonconforming, TGNC, people using an integrated set of approaches, including strategic litigation, policy advocacy, educational efforts, movement building, and the creation of programs that meet the needs of TGNC communities. You can learn more at transgenderlawcenter.org. Aimee Ogden is reading for World Central Kitchen. Founded in 2010 by Chef Jose Andres, World Central Kitchen is the first to the front lines, providing meals in response to humanitarian, climate, and community crises, while working to build resilient food systems with locally led solutions. WCK has served more than 17 million fresh meals to people affected by natural disasters and other crises around the world. WCK's resilience programs strengthen food and nutrition security by training chefs and school cooks, advancing clean cooking practices, and awarding grants to farms, fisheries, and small food businesses, while also providing educational and networking opportunities. You can learn more at wck.org. Tonight, our first reader is Ruth Joffre. Oh, but let me tell you before I introduce Ruth, if you're here on Zoom with us, feel free to just go ahead and leave your camera on because it's really nice to see people. And we do have a text chat off to the right that you can chime in on as you like. If you're on Facebook, kind of similar deal, but we're not able to monitor the chat quite as closely. So please don't feel neglected if we don't chat with you right away. And now, Ruth Joffre is the author of the story collection Night Beast. Her work has appeared in or is forthcoming in Night Beast. Hold that up again when you're about to read so that we can see the cover and have it in the recording. Work is appearing or forthcoming in Kenyon Review, Lightspeed, Pleiades, Choreo, the Florida Review Online, Wigleaf, Baffling Magazine, in the anthologies Best Microfiction 2021 and 2022, Unfettered Hexes, Queer Tales of Insatiable Darkness, and Evergreen, Grim Tales and Verses from the Gloomy Northwest. She lives in Seattle, where she serves as the 2020 to 2022 prose writer in residence at Hugo House. Ruth, welcome.
Thank you, Lara, and thanks everyone for coming and listening. I love to be able to just read and sit in bed, FYI, that's where I am. So you'll get to see me and my menagerie of art. I wanted to start out with one of the flashes that's going to be appearing in Best Microfiction 2022. It's called A Girl Wishes on a Star. And who can say whether that star in its capriciousness decides to answer? Who can say with certainty that a random star picked on a chilly autumn night cannot harness all the mysteries of the cosmos and hear from hundreds of light years away this wish the girl dares not utter aloud, a wish so small and secret she only allows herself to think it once while sitting next to a campfire at midnight after most of the other scouts from her troop have gone to sleep and left her almost alone with Sylvia, Syl, her crush, who likes wearing shorts even in winter and knits funny hats for herself in the shape of little forest creatures, and has never once shaved her legs because she says it's natural insulation. Why would I get rid of it? And why wouldn't that star, given a minute to consider this girl where she sits hugging her knees, casting her longing glances into the heart of the fire so the wrong person won't catch them, why wouldn't that star say, fuck it, this is an easy one, then grant the girl's wish, which is not to be popular or to have perfect skin or get into her first choice of college, but for Syl to sit next to her, just to sit beside her for a few minutes as autumn leaves fall around her in the starlight. Is that so much to ask? So that was A Girl Wishes on a Star, which is from a series that I'm doing, the A Girl series. It's a girl wishes on a star, a girl walks on the moon, a girl climbs a tree. And you can find many of them out on the internet, including one forthcoming in Nightmare, which I'm very excited about. And now I'm going to read from my story collection, Night Beast, which is creepy and a little sexy and cool, as you can get from the cover. And this is the first story, which appeared in Lightspeed. It's called Nitrate Nocturnes. Fiona's timer read 40, 33, 4, 21, 53, 8. Years, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds. Her first girlfriend had done the math one day in bed. You'll be 64 when you meet your soulmate. I'll be 22, the girl said, with a gesture that revealed her frail, luminous wrist, which was lit from within like a lightning bug. Fiona watched her own timer tick down through her girlfriend's hair, feeling as though she were trying to catch up to the world, as though she had always been one step behind. One day she would reach completion. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Her timer would ring out as if she had just won a sweepstakes at a supermarket, and the numbers inside her wrist would flash repeatedly before fading quietly into her skin. But the timer could not tell her if she would be happy. Oftentimes, soulmates, having spent their entire lives waiting for completion, had to reconcile their fantasies of the future with a bleak and unsatisfying reality. Not all soulmates were immediately compatible, and not all soulmates fell in love. It could take years, decades, a whole lifetime even, just to understand why this person of all people. It was all so unfair, Fiona whined, watching her girlfriend's timer. 6, 29, 5, 14, 57. And then 6, and then 5. You're just jealous, her girlfriend said with an ugly self-assurance. Fiona should have broken up with the girl right then, but 64 years was a long time. Much too long to be alone, she knew. It was easier to stay, to wait, when there was someone to hold on to late at night, when the weight of years pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. None of her lovers were meant for her, but she collected them all the same, cherishing what little time she had with them. And then she let them go, as if releasing paper lanterns at a wedding. She had watched with envy as her first girlfriend met her soulmate, learned his name, and proceeded to undo him, to uproot everything he thought he'd figured out about himself, his wants, his desires, and seed him with her favorite things, transforming him into the kind of person who wore boat shoes and drank good whiskey alone because he was ashamed. She'd always liked broken men. Fiona remembered this, just as she remembered the peculiarities of her first boyfriend's laugh, the imperial red jacket that attracted her to a one-night stand, and the strains of the jazz band at the background, as one of her good friends confessed that she didn't know how to love her soulmate, because in her heart she'd been expecting someone different, quieter, kinder, cleaner. Fiona had loved them all with a kind of happiness that brings with it a relief from longing. For her own sake, she learned not to isolate herself and to instead seek solace from others in a similar situation. Her current boyfriend was Marcus, a dispassionate Southerner with a resonant voice Fiona often described as oaky like red wine. His timer read 25, 16, 8, 7, 49, 52. He'd be 52, just 10 days shy of 53 when he found his soulmate, whom he imagined as a tall, willowy woman with gray hairs and pink reading glasses that matched the healthy color of her tongue. He was getting a PhD in sociology and intended to be a tenured professor by the age of 40, so that when he finally met his soulmate, he would have his half of their life already prepared. Fiona met him at a graduate student mixer in the fall of her third year. She knew just from the calm way he fixed himself a drink without bothering to glance at her timer that he was like her, a long gamer. He smiled when he finally noticed it. He led her outside where they sat in the shadow of the barn where the mixer was being held. It's curious, he said. These short timers act as if they're on the verge of unlocking all life's mysteries, like they're winning some sort of race toward maturity. But most of them can't fathom what it's like to wait. They're too impatient. Fiona leaned back against the soft hay the owners had left out for show. My mother used to tell me that a short timer isn't necessarily a blessing. My father was an alcoholic, and when she met him, she was at some dive in Pittsburgh celebrating her 21st birthday. He said she just kept crying. He's so old. What am I supposed to do with him? She wasn't prepared. None of them are. Marcus nodded, asking if it ended badly. When she told him that it had, he laid his hand quietly on hers and let her decide if she wanted the weight of it, the weight of his arms, his hips, their firm curves nestled between her legs as if he had all the time in the world. She'd invited him into her life in spite of his reputation for treating women like amusing diversions. Fiona had heard the story of a girl who went mad for him, having somehow managed to convince herself, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that their timers were wrong and Marcus was the one. He ended up having to get a restraining order. The experience left him wary of relationships, aware that women could break against him like waves against a cliff. One night he confessed all this to Fiona, then added that he liked her because she wouldn't break. She would outlast him, he said. When the years had worn him down as thin and soft as tissue, Fiona would still be standing like a lighthouse on the shore. When Fiona decided to move in with Marcus in the fall, her mother had misgivings. It's a little early, don't you think? Most people don't settle in for the long wait until 30. Fiona was making dinner at the time, throwing lentils into a stock pot to simmer. Her mother heard the clattering of pots. She sighed. He can't even cook, can he? He's just busy right now. He's preparing for his A exam. Don't you think you'd be happier with a woman? That's what you always wanted. I'm not unhappy with Marcus. He's safe. I need that right now. Her mother paused. Has it been bad? With a sigh, Fiona told her that most of the people in her program had already found their soulmates. One of them had asked his classmates to help him film the last hour of his wait. 6 of them circled around, holding booms, pushing dollies, watching his face as he strutted through the halls of the Performing Arts Building, smiling like an idiot. Fiona had criticized the project, called it self-indulgent and vacuous, something better suited for YouTube than a senior thesis. But when Fiona said this, one of her classmates groaned. God, why do you always have to shit on everything? Just because it's sentimental doesn't mean it's stupid. That's ridiculous, Fiona's mother said. You're the most sentimental person I know. Tell them that. She sighed, stirring the lentils. I've started to hate going to class. It just sounds like they got a bad batch this year. Next year will be better. Next year, 5 of them are going to meet their soulmates. Are they going to film those too? Fiona laughed once, but otherwise didn't respond. You know what you used to say to me, Fee? You said, Mama, I know who my soulmate is. I know her name. This started when she was a little girl and first took up watercolor. Her mother didn't understand her sudden fascination with art and music, but because before that, she'd never been interested in finger painting. When asked why the sudden change, Fiona fixed her mother with a long, baleful look and said, this is how I meet her, Mama. This is the best way. As if she'd considered all their possible futures together and determined that this one would be the best, the happiest. That kind of conviction is rare, Fee. Don't forget it. Fiona nodded and said goodbye, but the truth was that she didn't remember saying that. What prompted it? What had she known that her timer hadn't? It frightened Fiona to think that there was or could be more than one possible future. Was this, in fact, Fiona's best possible life? Her timer read 40, 33, 3, 16, 23, 8, then 7, 6, 5. Fiona finished cooking the soup and invited Marcus over. Then, when he had come in her mouth and fallen asleep on the sofa, she reconsidered the numbers pulsing on her wrists. In them, Fiona could see her future laid out like a series of milestones hidden inside a digital alarm clock. In 1 month, she and Marcus would sign a lease on a new apartment for the fall semester. In just 3 weeks, she would have midterms. In April, she would fly down to Mississippi with Marcus, where his family would either approve or disapprove of his choice in a waiting partner. And then nothing, absolutely nothing. Darkness stretched out before her like a sheet, obscuring everything, even her timer. How long would the darkness last, she wondered. Late at night, when the campus emptied, Fiona climbed down into one of the gorges, bringing only a video camera and a thermos of coffee. Earlier that semester, fences had been installed on all the bridges on campus to prevent students from jumping off. Fiona's latest project was to film these students from below, zooming in until their faces blurred together into a single tremulous mass. Fiona understood their fear, the way it circled them like an owl gliding toward its prey. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the thought that she had taken a wrong turn, lost sight of what was most important in life. She was on the verge of ending things with Marcus when her timer began speeding up. It started in class, a brief flash immediately followed by a sound like a hiccup in her right wrist when her timer whirred into its new position. 40, 23, 6, 19, 47, 8. 1 hour had been lopped off her original time, bringing her incrementally and unexpectedly nearer her completion date of 2047. Her friend Siobhan, sitting next to her, hurried to explain what happened to their curious classmates, and their teacher, a prim blonde woman in her mid to late 50s, lifted Fiona's arm, scrutinizing it carefully. "I've heard of this happening," their teacher said, sounding disappointed because Fiona's numbers had stopped whirring and they wouldn't be able to film it in real time. "I know there are researchers in Canada who film demands timer growing longer, but no one, to my knowledge, has managed to capture the reverse phenomenon yet." Though it happened 4 more times during that class, none of them aimed a camera at her wrist, not because she would have objected, but because they didn't honestly believe it would happen again. Each time her wrist hiccuped, Fiona jumped and her classmates gazed at her in wonder, as if she'd prove interesting after all. She was invited to a party that night, to everyone's surprise. She didn't bring Marcus. Her timer had shaved off 43 hours by the time she arrived at the house. She could hear laughter swelling in the backyard. Siobhan was there with their classmates and a few people she had seen walking around between classes. Her cheeks were nearly frozen. She happily joined them in front of the fire pit, where she perched on a log and accepted a cup of mulled wine. Their host said, "Someone's excited," with a knowing smirk. Fiona just blushed and pulled her sleeve farther down her wrist. Curious, the host settled beside Fiona on the log. "I'm Ramona to my mother." Fiona nodded through the steam of her mulled wine. "Have we met before?" "No, but I believe you know Matt," she said, pointing across the fire pit to a schlubby guy with a frosted beard and a lumberjack's cap. "He is my guy, my rock." Fiona looked Matt up and down. "He seems very sturdy." Roman sputtered beer, laughing. "Matt said you were a bitch, in a good way, I promise." This did not faze Fiona. She had heard it before. She turned to Siobhan, who walked over with the bag of marshmallows and the fixings for s'mores. "Just one," she said, pointing to Roman. "I know how you get." Roman, who had already stuffed 2 marshmallows in her mouth, lifted her hands as if to say, "I'm innocent, don't shoot." Siobhan scowled. "Don't give me that face. I'm onto you. Go find me some sticks." With an exaggerated pout, Roman trudged into the house in search of roasting forks. Once alone, Siobhan whispered to Fiona, "Everyone's talking about your timer." Fiona shrugged. "I'm more interested in whatever's going on between you and Roman." Siobhan smirked but didn't deny it. Her mischievous gaze drifted to where Roman and Matt stood framed in the small window of the kitchen. Matt had taken off his lumberjack cap and matching jacket and appeared to be snickering at something Roman had said. His flask rose to his lips, but Roman took it away from him before he could drink. He didn't take offense at this or demand it back, only rolled up his sleeves and set about doing dishes while Roman returned with 3 roasting forks. Matt looked up briefly and waved to Fiona where she sat, wondering if that was what happiness was made of. Confidence, ease. Having refilled her cup of wine and located a full box of graham crackers, Roman plunked herself down on the grass and began loading a roasting fork with marshmallows. How many you want? She said, asking Fiona. All of them. Roman laughed, holding 10 over the fire. I like your style. Fiona crouched next to the fire, holding her graham crackers at the ready. Siobhan laughed. It's gonna be a minute, Fee. I know. I wish I brought my camera. Hovering above the flame, the pale underbellies of the marshmallows began slowly to caramelize, reminding Fiona of a burning film strip. How the celluloid bubbled, then burst, leaving brown pockets of color where images used to be. She had burned an entire movie once, shot it on a reel of overexposed Super 8 film, then lit it on fire, one frame at a time, just to see it for herself. Just because, she told them. She remembered seeing the image of her own hand glowing hot in the flames, the fingers and palm turning orange, losing shape. Roman deposited the roasted marshmallow on her graham cracker just as it began to ooze. Thank you, she breathed. After one bite, her phone flashed. Marcus had texted, you up? It took some doing to write back without getting chocolate and marshmallow on her phone. Her frustrated growl made Siobhan giggle. I'm not in the mood tonight. I'm just really into this s'more. It's my boyfriend now. Siobhan tilted her head like a psychiatrist. You seem to have a thing for dark chocolate. Fiona was in the middle of a bite and could only mumble the word shut up. Roman leaned back, loading another set of marshmallows. You seeing someone, Fiona? She nodded, waving her hand as if it meant nothing. Marcus, he might come. He know about your timer? This question surprised Fiona, who had never considered the possibility that the single most essential thing about her, the length of her weight, could shrink inside her, becoming small and dark and secretive like the inside of a camera where images wait to be found. Her number seemed to change of its own volition, losing a minute here, an hour there, without asking her consent or giving her time to adjust to her new identity. When in the light of the fire, her timer began to wail, spinning and stopping and then spinning again. Her brain buzzed over from wine, struggled to understand just what was happening from one moment to the next, and couldn't process the numbers. 0, 18, 5, 23, 14, 6, then 42, 5, 6, 14, 38, 2, and then 0, 26, 6, 9, 14, 23. It lingered on this last time long enough that people began to do the math. 26 weeks. That would be August, summer, orientation maybe? You think it could be a prospective student? When her timer began to vacillate between August and March, it became clear this was a prospective student, a graduate student, she hoped, who'd been admitted to several programs and was deciding between them, wondering which ones they would visit. Fiona's timer suggested they decided on her school, but then all of a sudden rolled itself back to the beginning, to 40, 23, 4, 13, 47, 6. Her friends leaned back. One of them said, oh, unwilling to voice what they were all thinking, that Fiona's soulmate had chosen not to come, and there was nothing Fiona could do about it. When she looked up, she saw Marcus's face materialize in the shadows, his broad mouth and distinguished stubble lit from below by his phone. The mere sight of him there made her want to cry. Marcus comforted her as best he could. He walked her home after the party and let her cry herself out. Then he kissed her, his warm satin kisses preceding his fingers as he told her to relax. He took his time, thinking this would soothe her, but when it was over and he was in the shower, she went rummaging through a box of old clothes for a pair of leather cuffs that her father had made for her before he died. Timers can be so cruel, her father had said, fastening the cuffs around her wrist to hide the numbers glowing under her skin. He had sobered up by then. 13 years of hard work on her mother's part had turned him into the man her timer had anticipated and demanded. United, they brought out the best possible versions of each other. That was what made them soulmates, patient and considerate. Humbled by his alcoholism and his past, Fiona's father tried making amends with small acts of kindness, like the cuffs. Then, one day at an ATM not far from their house, he was killed in broad daylight by a high school senior attempting his first robbery. I needed the money, the teenager said in custody. I'm supposed to meet my soulmate in a month and I need to support her. Someone had carved their numbers into the wall of the library. 33, 19, 6, 15, 47, 3. No one knew if the numbers belonged to a real human being or if they'd been auto-generated by the artist under the cover of night. But everyone understood the meaning of the title. I refuse. When people began adding their own numbers to this list, critics noted with some disdain that all of them belonged to long gamers and that the piece smacked of a kind of juvenile self-pity in which only a disgruntled and unloved artist could indulge. But then short-timers began adding their numbers, as did professors and enders who had long since reached their completion date. Fiona was surprised both that the list had filled the library's western wall and that the administration allowed it to continue, even after campus religious groups referred to the piece as an abomination. In their opinion, timers were a gift from God, and rejecting that gift was a form of blasphemy. Marcus asked if she was going to add her name to the wall. She hesitated. Are you? I just think it's silly, Marcus said, watching people scratch their numbers into the wall with keys and scissors. You can't escape fate. Even if you do reject your timer, it's going to count down anyway. You're going to meet your soulmate, so why fight it? Fiona dipped her head. Don't you find it exhausting, living up to these expectations? He shrugged, setting his coffee on the table. I'm a patient man. His remarkable self-assurance made Fiona uneasy, and she regretted having joined him in the library cafe. Exhausted by a nasty sinus infection she'd been fighting since mid-March, Fiona lifted her gaze, head wobbling as she glanced around the room. It seemed everywhere she looked, harried students were working at a feverish pace, desperate to return to their nice warm beds. Her brain felt like a watercolor, its pale amorphous lobes ridding the world of its edges, and her thick phlegmy cough rattled in her chest like the cogs of a broken down machine. Fiona, Marcus said, reaching out to touch her hand, you need to get some rest. Fiona withdrew, pulling her sleeves down to hide her cuffs. I just need to finish this. Marcus sat back disappointed. You shouldn't be wearing those things. That's not your decision to make. Suit yourself. Fiona blinked up at him, wondering when he stood. Are you leaving? I'm just getting another coffee. Do you want one? Fiona felt her mind nod irrespective of her head. As Marcus walked off, the asymmetrical patterns of his turtleneck unhinged, like the colorful pieces of a tangram she couldn't fit back into its box. He used to make sense to her, but ever since the night in front of the fire, he felt different. She had begun distancing herself from him, making room for her soulmate in case she arrived early. Of late, she had taken to imagining that her soulmate had already arrived, that she could sense this woman all around in her house, in her bed, lingering beside her as she got dressed and went outside to greet the world with a secret happiness, a kind of intricate joy that kept her from feeling alone. Once or twice, she told Marcus she'd even caught herself thinking in terms of the two of us, her and her soulmate, as if she were making decisions for the both of them. When he returned, she was doodling in her notebook. What's that? The pictures, she said, rotating the book so he could see a woman's head, its rounded chin, and high, elegant forehead framed by a ring of loose curls. Fiona imagined the curls were blonde, but otherwise had no real insight into the woman's precise features. I wish I could see her face. Where the nose and mouth would be, she had drawn a blank. And I think I will stop there.
Don't we get the rest of the story, Ruth?
You can read it online at Lightspeed unless I have more time, but am I done? I think I did.
How long would it take you to finish? We try to get the whole story.
I think I'm only halfway there, Laura. It's gonna take a bit.
All right, it's highly non-standard for us, but if you could drop the link, I'll make sure that in the chat, I'll make sure that it gets into Facebook as well.
Okay. I will grab it. There you go.
Okay, excellent. Well, We always take a breath between the writers because we just need that. And especially since my brain is going to keep harping on that story now. I'm going to have to read it before I go to bed. But we have more stories coming up, and this will keep us all very, very much occupied. So prepare to hand your attention over to Aimee Ogden. Aimee Ogden is a former science teacher and software tester, and now she writes stories about sad astronauts and space mermaids. Her Nebula finalist novella, Sun Daughters, Sea Daughters, debuted in 2021, along with the unrelated novella, Local Star, and her short fiction has appeared in publications such as Lightspeed, Clark's World, and Beneath Ceaseless Skies. Did I just now get muted? Okay. Did I get all of your credits, including Beneath Ceaseless Skies? Okay. She also co-edits Translunar Traveler's Lounge, a magazine of fun and optimistic speculative fiction, which frankly can be pretty hard to get these days, but is also really nice when you find it. Aimee, welcome.
Thank you. I am gonna actually be reading from one of my stories in Beneath Ceaseless Skies tonight, and I want to preface it by mentioning that this story does touch on domestic violence and marital rape for people who are tuning in who don't want that right now. And it is called "A Flower Cannot Love the Hand." I'm gonna take a drink of water first because suddenly my mouth is dry for some reason. A flower cannot love the hand. The first thing I asked when the Mage King gave me a mouth was whether he had given me a soul. His people's beloved king, who held back the lords of the undead when they came roving, by whose conquering hand the strongholds were fed in the long fallow winter. You can see his likeness remade in stone or woven into tapestries in the halls of the many keeps where he is celebrated, his brow heavy with jewels and wisdom, his staff and sword outstretched. It was not of stone or fine thread that he made me in his turn, but of flowers. Bog rushes first in place of bones, and yarrow for fine white flesh. Curls of foxglove to give me a matched set of ears, pink campion to raise the color in my cheeks, a shock of pimpernel for a sharp red tongue, a perfect string of snowberries sewn into my jaw for teeth, a tumble of honeysuckle that my hair would always smell as sweet as rain, and last of all he set 2 perfect blossoms of sheepspit in the soft, hollow spaces of my eyes. Flowers for beauty, he said later, his hands busy with wand or pen, a half justification long after the thing was done. But many things are beautiful, and flowers are also soft and yielding, so easily bruised and torn. And flowers do not know how to run away. So I wandered the Mage King's halls. I knelt in his gardens and whispered to my silent sisters, the morning glory and the oxeye and the goldenrod. I learned how to move as a woman would move and to speak to people in place of plants. I mapped out the spaces of his keep in my new forged heart, and when the winter's cold came, I learned to tremble and not to crumble into nothingness. Forgive me, primordial God of the soil and sky, who blessed me with my first and truest shape. There was one more thing I might have learned with more time, and that was to forgive the Mage King. To my shame, I think I might even have found a way to love him, had his heart been lonely, had he undone and remade 1,000 blossoms only for want of gentle company. I could have loved his hands, which were ink-stained so much more often than they were covered with the blood of his wars. Magecraft was his true nature, as the exchange of sunlight for sweetness was mine. It was only necessity that drove both of us in our course to bloodletting. But I do not forgive him, and I surely do not love him, because he devised me not on his own account, but rather on behalf of another man, a bride gift for his sister's son. Long ago, the boy's mother had laid a tunget on him that he would never marry a human woman. A spiteful magic and a stern one. Her power was not less than that of the Mage King's, and he could never undo what she had sworn. So I was the fruit of the Mage King's compromise, a halfway thing that never should have been. He made me and he taught me. He housed me in cold halls of stone. He wrapped me in linen robes and gave me to his sister's son to wed, with my dead kindred braided into my hair. When my new husband clasped my hand beneath the bower, his fingers were black too, but with the bruises of battle, not ink. He was never a man of learning, my husband. I did not understand at first what it meant to be so given. The courtship of flowers is a modest thing, the exchange of love letters by a soft-spoken messenger, a distant dance. No one in the Mage King's hall told me what awaited me in my husband's bed. The tears that do not mend, seen and unseen alike, the lingering, sickly sweetness of bruised oils that refuse to wash from the bedding. Any man, the Mage King told me, would be proud to wed his daughter to such a man, whose hall stands so strong, whose sword has never failed in battle, whose larders overflow with his good fortune. But the Mage Man is not my father. If I have any parents at all, they are as monstrous as he is, and their names are Appetite and Necessity. Why did he choose flowers? He should have made me from the soft pelt of the hunting dog and the wet, dark eyes of the ewe. These are creatures who strive to love their masters in all that they do. A flower cannot love the hand that tears it from the stem. The people of this land hail the Mage King as a hero. He is Prince Foxfast for his sly, clever nature, Lord of the elders who raised up the very trees against his enemies from the world below. O wise one, O saint of the small folk, did you never stop to wonder why a mother would shelter women from her own son's marriage bed? You swore that he was owed a wife. What am I owed, O you who shaped my lips petal soft to smile, who clad me in skin that weeps sweet fragrance when it bruises? The Mage King had not told me whether I had a soul, and so I begged my husband, my maker-made match, to say in his place. He laughed, calling these wild fancies for a wild wife. He gave me a gown of blue linen, and he tore it away from me at his desire. It was not mine. I was not mine. He had no gardens. His servants tilled vast, monotonous fields in his name. I was not permitted to walk their green rows, but I could see them from the high window of his hall, a violence of rigid lines imprinted on the earth. An earthen prison for my barley cousins and vetch sisters and beet brothers, not allowed to mingle one with the other, not permitted to strive above the rest for sunlight and the sweet kiss of summer rains. Once, when I slipped my keepers, I tore up an armspan of yellowing grain before they caught me and dragged me to the ground. As far as I could stretch from fingertip to fingertip, and yet when I was ensconced back in the hall, I could not even see what mark I might have left, and the barley heads nodded in sorrow and gratitude. So I withered and waned in my husband's manse. I do not believe that a human woman is meant to wilt, but who would have told me elsewise? My husband's servants did not speak to me or even meet my eyes when they brought food and wine. But then I only ever asked them for help, for an open door, an unbarred window, an unsheathed knife. I screamed at them, I raged and gnashed my teeth. I bit if they were heedless enough to put themselves within my reach. Perhaps they would have answered me if I had held my voice to human timbers, if I had asked them only about their own true nature and not to restore me to my own. Flower has its thorns too, and the bright, bitter berry that warns away the hind and the heart. How shall I shape my thoughts around him who I loved and who in my carelessness I lost? Though he was a man, shaped of the same flesh that the primordial God drew up from the ancient mud, I remember him only in parts. The ivy green of his eyes, the wind in the wood of his laugh, the tuneless hum that brought his yapping dogs to heel. A hunter by trade, and my fast friend for that he had never set plow to earth. I remember him soaked in moonlight, begging the hospitality of my husband's halls by dead of night. I could not see his face. The moonlight was too bright. It would have pained any eyes, most especially those of one whose face was never meant to hold them. My husband had gone to fight in his uncle's war, joining the Mage King's vassals who rallied beneath the banner of the Elder and Wand. It cost me nothing to offer up what did not belong to me. At my word, the servants let the hunter pass beneath the beams of my husband's hall, and he ate my husband's food and drank his wine. If he slept in my husband's bed too, and if he touched my husband's wife, that is only one more thing that had never belonged to me, and so one more thing that I could give without care. The primordial God raised the first man from clay and gave him the world, but he made the flowers first, yes, and all the trees and moss and good green things of the earth. Why should the elder be disinherited so? What was the sin of our first kin that our rule should be handed over to him who came last among the children of that singular creator? Perhaps my lord and lover treasured me merely because I was never his to treasure. And perhaps again, it was something more. I do not know how to cry, so I cannot spill tears for that. He could not or would not tell me whether I had a soul. I asked him so often while we lay sleepless in my husband's stolen bed, with his fingers tracing the petal patterns on my bare skin. That trickster Hope had knitted me up tight within her obscuring veils, and I believed these new stirrings in my heart, in my needful flesh, were the certain signs of ensoulment. Instead, he would always turn the question back on me, laughing, asking where his own soul could be found, whether I could touch it, and with what medium I would mark it when I did. Though he had traveled far and wide, he told me, he had never yet seen the map to any living thing's soul. But he would search yet, he promised, with his words and his hands, as far and wide and deep as I demanded. For a season, he warmed my husband's bed and supped at my husband's table. For a season, we breathed love into one another's warm, open mouths and ignored the simmering perfume of the servant's hatred. Season is so long. A season would have marked a lifetime once. But I wanted longer, and I told him how we could have it. I birthed the idea, I crafted the plan, and the blame should have been chained around my neck alone. He was a hunter first before he was mine. All he would have to do was throw his spear true one more time. A flower will never bless the garden wall that blocks out the light, but she is grateful for the bee that lands lightly and takes what is offered to make sweet things. The bee has its sting too, as the flower has her thorns. Their tragedy is this: though they may pierce the flesh, their damage is as short and sweet as the honey season. The Mage King dragged us out of my husband's hall and bound us with cord and sorcery alike. His eyes were sad as he stood over us. A waste, he said, a terrible waste. I could not see my lord and lover's face with the frost-rimed grass against my cheek, but I could see the Mage King's sadness, and I could hate it. My husband, still marked with his wounds, stood forth as witness and called my deeds a great betrayal. A betrayal that I reached back for the first arms that touched me in tenderness, that I sought to break the living bars of my prison. My husband does not understand what it means to be betrayed. It was him who betrayed the primordial God when he pledged his faith and fidelity before the priestman's altar and then broke those vows upon my body. It was the Mage King who betrayed the god's gift of sunlight to make a wife woman of its flesh. It was my lord and lover's spear that betrayed me when it broke my husband's side, but not his grasp on life. To betray is to break trust, confidence, love. What was there between my husband and I to be broken? My lover's blood is in the river now. It will find its freedom in the sea, and I will not mourn him. A blow for a blow. My husband slew him for coveting what he did not own, and his mother's brother, my maker, the Mage King, named it justice. This justice should have fallen on me alone. It was I who wished to prolong the honey season past its natural limit. And it is I who will live to pay the price through the long, lean winter, when this justice, the justice of men, turned to me. It did not spill my blood. The Mage King chained me and bound me by all the wards and sigils of his craft. I did not scream or beg his mercy, nor my husband's, as he tore away the woman shape which he had given me. Bones sheared but did not snap. Pieces of my body sloughed away into nothingness. Others hardened where they had once been soft, grew light and fragile where they had been strong. When he found me no longer fit to be a woman, he reshaped me as an owl, cursed by all the birds of the forest and hated by all the small, tender things that scurry in the night. A creature of the night with eyes that would never again open on the honest light of day. My punishment would be to endure all the long, cold years of my life alone without the sun, my first love, my own flesh. What is a flower but sunlight incarnate? What becomes of her when she is banished to the dark side of day? But do not forget, each night the moon holds up her mirror to the sun, a wan reflection, but a true one. Here is the justice of men, bent past its breaking point so that what was chained tight is free again. The woman's shape was never mine. To lose it gives me no pain. I am still myself, rearranged into this bird form. I am made buoyant by its hollow bones. I am cloaked again in petals, murky gray and brown though they are. I am still myself, and so I am answered at last. Yes, I have a soul, no matter what shape its vessel is forced into. I remember that I am sunlight made tender flesh, even as I stir soundless feathers against a starlit sky. I remember the wind in the woods, the gift of nectar, the graze of wings. Though I cannot see the sun, I fly ever closer to her resting place, and I pray she hears me in her dreams when I call. From this new high vantage, I can see that this soul is one that no one gifted me. I made it for myself. From endurance like fine linen, I wove it. With shears of spite, I cut it to shape. With hope's fragile, tricksome thread, I stitched it, and in blood have I dyed it twice over. Perhaps the day will come when my tormentors decide that their justice has not left deep enough marks in my flesh. Let them break open this shape too and crush my soul stuff into the next and the next and the next. I will still be what I am. I will still remember the face of the sun and her sweet, sacred name. And when there is nothing left of any of us but bones and muddled myth, it will be made plain that their shells were hollow ones, that it was the Mage King and his sister's son all along, to whom the primordial god of soil and sky never troubled to fit a soul. The end.
Oh, I like that. That's good stuff. Thank you, Aimee. I was wondering how that could possibly have a remotely positive ending, but
I promised.
you made it happen. It happened and it earned it. Thank you. Well, Daniel, we've had another fantastic evening here at Story Hour. I love both of these writers. Gorgeous stuff. You know, every week is great in its own way, of course. Next week is going to be great in the way of Brian Hugenbrook. I have so much trouble with that name. And Nicole J. LaBeouf. And I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com to see who else is coming up in upcoming weeks. Make sure you don't miss anything. But here's a great thing. If you do miss something, you can go then to Facebook and look at all the videos we've ever recorded on the Story Hour page on Facebook. So, you know, we love to have you here. We love it when you just sneak in later and watch the videos too. We just love sharing all these wonderful writers and their wonderful stories with you. Ruth, Aimee, thank you both so much for reading for us tonight. And thank you to Daniel Marcus, who is the reason we're here every Wednesday, often the high point of my week. And thank you, all of you who are joining us now, all of you who are coming in later to enjoy the stories, for sharing and spinning the fictive dream with us at Story Hour. Good night.